All right, it's 7 o'clock, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. Welcome to our August school board meeting. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have one small change to this agenda that I want to make note of at this time. Our ASB representative Paisley will be joining us tonight. Thanks for joining us. She is going to give us a report in our report section, so please make a note of that in your agenda. Okay, our first order of business is to review the consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries 5-0. And now we will be moving on to our report section. Dr. Lyon, we will let you start us off.
All right, thank you very much. I have watched this month our talented executive assistant in a whirlwind that she calls August Palooza, and I now understand it. It's been quite a busy month, and it continues to be. We had a breakfast with the Chamber of Commerce that Director Thorne attended, and that was a great opportunity to get to know the community. We had a great turnout of our administrative team, and it was really nice. This week, we've introduced and welcomed about 40 new staff members for the new staff academy that kind of gets them up to speed with the practices and rules of the district. And that was fun to get to know them, to have an opportunity to talk to them a little bit. And we've got some just outstanding new talent coming into the district. A reminder that this Monday, we have mandatory safety and security training with the goal of 100% of our employees being trained for 3.5 hours on safety and security protocols for our schools this coming year. And that's something that we are looking forward to refreshing, learning, and making sure that as school starts, our schools are as safe and sound as possible. One of the board goals, superintendent goals coming in, was to increase the opportunities to receive community feedback. And we've talked about conducting listening sessions, and we have put together tentatively the first of those listening sessions at September 8th at Ridges Elementary, where I will entertain questions and concerns and feedback from the community. We recognize this is fairly short notice for the first one, but as part of that, we also want to attempt to address the questions surrounding the proposed adoption of the K-5 social science curriculum. And so that's going to be a great opportunity for community members to speak directly to myself and to the teaching and learning team regarding what that curriculum looks like. But to underscore, it is a listening session for any topic. And we're going to do hopefully at least 5 of those, the first one on September 8th, and then in different venues around the district and around the town more as the year goes on. The partnership with the city is going well, and we've engaged in conversations about the pedestrian bridge. That seems to be gaining momentum, and we're working very closely with them on what they need from the school district regarding the project and moving it forward. And then I guess the last thing I would say is we're on the cusp of the first days of school, and I really encourage board members to come on out to the schools if you want to get involved in the organized structure, like we're all going to deploy to different schools. If you want to do that, great. If you want to just drop by a school, we'll let the principals know that you'll be out and about on that day as well. So very excited about the first day of school. And then of course, the last thing would be, we have our all staff, all district rally tomorrow. And that's great news that preliminarily, all 5 of you as Board of Director members are going to attend, and you will join us as an entire staff to kick off the year. Really looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Paisley, if you have a report for us, we'd love to hear it.
I'm Paisley, and I was elected as ASB president of Sherwood High School during May last year. And so my job at these meetings are basically just to update you on what leadership and student council is doing over at the high school. So last week, we just got back from our student council retreat where we planned homecoming and like prep for the beginning of the school year. This year, homecoming's a little bit different. Our game will be on a Thursday, September 22nd. And then the next day is a Friday, and that's when our parade is. And then the next day after that will be the dance itself. So it's a little bit different and structured a little bit differently, but it'll still be really good. Another thing that we're working on right now is the Leadership Summit, which is basically we're going to be going around all of the elementary schools and the middle schools and like trying to strike a beginning for like turning younger kids into leaders and like showing them what it means to be on like student government and stuff like that. And that is supposed to be held on October 22nd. So stay tuned for that. And right now, during all of the teachers' professional development, we are just preparing the school, like putting up posters and just getting ready to start the year off right. And so that's basically what we're doing right now. Thank you.
Thank you for coming and thank you for sharing with us. That's exciting. I know students will love to get to look up to you guys as leaders and see what all you guys are doing in the school. So thank you for doing that. All right, Director Lee, do you have a report for us?
Nothing really to report. We're getting back into the school year. I've been able to meet with actually some students, and that was I think productive. And so they've I think they're going to present something today, but other than that, nothing else.
Thank you. Director Nyangaro.
I didn't have anything specific to report, just excited for the school year to start, and I'm looking forward to Friday nights and watching football and just really amped up for the year. So I think it's going to be a great year.
Director Adamson. Director Thorne.
I don't have anything necessarily to report specifically. I just want to thank all of our admin team and our teachers and our staff for getting our schools prepped and ready for the start of the school year. It's like you can kind of feel the excitement and in some cases dread in the air. But I know I'm excited for my kids to go back to school. And just a big thank you to everybody for all the work that you do in welcoming your kids back. And I look forward to visiting the schools sometime in the beginning, of the year and saying hello and just, I'm excited. And so thank you.
Thank you. Well, I don't have a huge report prepared either, but I did have the opportunity this morning to go tour the high school, which I'm bummed I haven't had a chance to do it until now. So I was extremely excited to go and see a bunch of the different classrooms and some of the programs that we're able to offer our students. And I was so incredibly impressed and almost found myself like that old person saying, oh, back when I was in school, but truthfully walking around welding and wood shop and theater and band and art and all these programs, it just blew my mind that is what our students have available to them. And my oldest child isn't in high school yet. So we haven't gone through those programs and I haven't had access to seeing those. So that was incredibly exciting. And I think our students are so lucky to have all those resources and the support of our community that paid for that bond to build that new high school. And if any of you haven't had a chance to go see it and you get the opportunity, you definitely should go take a peek at the new school. It's very cool. Okay. At this time, we are going to move along to public comment. These public comments pertain to the agenda tonight, typically at this time. However, if we have public comment from students, we also allow that to go at this time as well, whether it applies to the agenda at this time or not. So tonight we do have 2 students who have asked to come and put in public comments. So we're excited to welcome them. Drew Gregory, you are up first. Sure. come on up. And Sophia, will you tell me how to say your last name? Okay, thank you. Thank you. We can share it. Thank you. Now, just as a reminder, you guys have 3 minutes and we will not be responding during that time, although we may love to. So this is just a time for us to hear from you guys.
Just as a note, because they each did sign up separately, would we allow the 3 minutes each?
I think that'd be perfectly acceptable. Go ahead.
Hello, board members, Dr. Lyon, Paisley, and all the members of the district here and watching tonight. My name is Sophia Majeski.
And I'm Drew Gregory. We'd like to take some time today to talk about a project we've been working on relating to the district and the school board. We call it the Sherwood Student Union.
Both Drew and I have been part of the Sherwood School District since kindergarten. Both starting off at Archer Glen, went through SMS at the old building, and are now going to be seniors this year.
We've both been very involved in our time here in the Sherwood schools. We've done everything from Battle of the Books in elementary school to student council in high school. We've had some amazing experiences in the Sherwood schools, and looking back on our education, we've also seen some areas that could use improvement.
In the spring, I was introduced to a member of the Tiger Twalton Student Union. I had no idea this was even a thing, and it immediately piqued my interest. They had formed years ago after a fully student-run school board campaign was successful. Those students realized how much they loved being involved with the district and wanted to do more. The Tiger Twalton Student Union was formed to keep that connection between the board and the student body. I knew I had to reach out to Drew about this immediately. We've experienced pretty much everything throughout our education together, from pull-out math groups in elementary school, taking the same classes in middle school, and each getting involved in our fair share of high school programs. When I told him about the student union, I know that not only would he be interested, he would be the perfect person to do this with.
From there, we started working on making this idea a reality. We knew we had to recreate something similar here in Sherwood. We got started on an application system, our own constitution, and an outline for how we wanted this whole thing to work, as well as the goals we wanted to tackle.
In the past month, we've even assembled our first members, which you can see sitting over there. We have a full leadership board as well as union members to share their opinion with us. Our goal of the student union is simple. We want to form a mutually beneficial connection between us and the school board. We want to be the connector between the board and superintendent and the entire district student body.
We've come to realize how seldom students are connected to what's going on within the district. Most don't even know what the school board is, let alone that there are meetings where they can share their opinions via public comments. But the entire point of the school board and the district itself is to serve us, the students. It is our education, and we know what we need to succeed to the best of our abilities with the guidance of our teachers and parents.
We want to empower students to take the driver's seat in their education. We strongly believe that when students know the why behind decisions and rules, they will be more passionate about their education. We want students to be aware of the district inner workings and how they can advocate for themselves.
As mentioned before, our student union consists of a leadership board as well as union members. We want to get as many students involved as possible, and the only requirements to be a union member are to be in the Sherwood School District and to come to one single meeting per month, share their story and opinions regarding their education.
Our leadership board is mainly high schoolers, but we want the union to include everyone. At an upper middle school level to high school, students can take on projects within the union, come to public comment at board meetings, and more. We also want younger middle school students as well as potentially elementary school students to get involved. We know that all kids are able to offer meaningful insight into what they need out of their education. As younger students gain exposure to older students, we hope a strong connection will be formed between them, setting an example for leadership and involvement. I know that if I had the chance to be mentored by high school as a fourth grader, I would have loved it.
In talking to each other and our other members, we've compiled a list of goals we want to explore first. These are listed in your handouts. Some of these include looking at the possibility of changing valedictorian requirements and potential ways to enhance the TAG and AVID programs. We have many different ideas in mind on how to accomplish these goals. The first of which is guidance. We know what our experiences have been and try to supplement our knowledge of the district with the online district policy as well as ODE policy. But we're still learning a lot and trying to see what we can even begin to effectively tackle. We've set up meetings with a few board members so far, as well as Dr. Lyon, and are working on setting up meetings with the rest of the board in the coming weeks. We hope that these meetings can provide a space for a positive connection and a space for us to ask questions that we have not yet found our answers to.
In addition to these meetings, which have already gone amazing, we are going to utilize board meetings, whether this be getting union members to speak during public comment or requesting to be added to the agenda when we have a concrete thought out project. We think that board meetings will be one of the best ways to connect, as we can speak directly to the entire board. You will definitely see us at all the board meetings, even if we're just observing, and we're so excited to begin our involvement.
If anyone is listening, is interested in the student union, has any questions, or wants to nominate a student, we'd love to get in contact with you. You can email us at sherwoodstudentunion@gmail.com or message us on our Facebook or Instagram pages. We can't wait to hear from you.
Thank you so much for listening to us. We're looking forward to working with all of you in this coming school year and setting up this positive relationship that will hopefully last for years to come.
Thank you both for joining us tonight and for your whole group for joining us, actually. I applaud you guys for coming up here and advocating on behalf of yourself. I think that's such a cool thing to see students doing that. And I look forward to your attendance at our meetings. And I know I'm looking forward to meeting with you guys next week. So that's very cool. Thank you. Okay, that concludes our public comment section for this portion of our meeting. I would like to invite Dr. Fritz to the podium for an update on our integrated guidance.
Good evening, Chair Hawkins, Board of Directors, and Superintendent Dr. Lyon. While an overview of the integrated guidance process, okay, well, I'll talk anyway. While an overview of the integrated guidance process was provided at the board meeting last April, this evening I will be providing a brief update regarding the steps that we are taking as a district to meet the requirements of this initiative. But more importantly, the way that we are using this opportunity to renew our engagement efforts with the community regarding how we are doing as a district, our strengths and areas for improvement, and ways in which we can all work together as a community to best meet the needs of Sherwood's youth. It works. All right. Specifically, the three key objectives of this evening's presentation are to provide a brief overview of the grant funds allocated to the school district through the Oregon Department of Education's Integrated Guidance Aligning for Student Success Initiative, provide an update on the requirements and timeline for continuing to receive the 6 grants that are part of the initiative, and share how the district has begun taking this opportunity to renew and strengthen our processes for listening and dialogue with students, parents, and community partners. So there are 6 particular grants that are part of this. And I know we did a whole session on this back in April, but I want to just do kind of a review of this. The 6 grants that are part of this initiative coming out of ODE are the High School Success Act, which was created by Measure 98 in 2016. And the funding for Sherwood last school year was $1.34 million. The goals specifically of that grant are to increase high school graduation rates, increase equitable access to advanced coursework, improve high school graduates' readiness for career and college. And some of the allowable uses of those funds include dropout prevention, career and technical education, some of those great classrooms that were referenced earlier in our board report, college level education opportunities as well. So our partnership with PCC and CCC. The second one of those grants is the Student Investment Account, which was created by the legislature in 2019. And that is part of the Student Success Act, which is funded through the corporate activities tax. Our funding here in Sherwood last school year was $3.58 million for that particular grant. And the goals of that grant are focused on meeting students' mental and/or behavioral health needs, reducing academic disparities and increasing academic achievement for all of our students, and paying for things specifically in our district have been focused on behavior IAs and our behavior TOSAs, additional PE and music time at elementary, our elementary STEM program to actually build out our career technical education from not just at high school, but all the way down to elementary. We've added mental health personnel. We have 2 full-time district level mental health specialists, one at the middle school, one at the high school. We were able to add additional teachers at Hawksview. and more recently, a dean of students at Hawksview, as well as an associate principal at Ridges. This has also helped us with our MTSS rollout, which we've talked about at other board meetings, so I'm not going to go into a whole lot around that. The third grant there that you see, the Continuous Improvement Planning Grant, it has a big 0 next to it. But really what that is, it's a requirement under OAR 581-022-2250 that we submit a plan every 3 years in order to be able to continue to access funds overall. So that's really, even though it says there's 0 tied to it, it's tied to all 6 of these. The fourth one there that you see is career and technical education. That's our Perkins. That's really what funds those great programs of welding and fabrics and some of those other amazing programs that we have at our high school. This one's a little harder to pinpoint. It says approximately 30,000 per year. That is because we actually get that funding after the fact, and it really has to do with how many students have gone through the entire 6 course pathway. That's one I'd like to see us continue to grow and bring in more students that are part of that. And then the fifth one that you see there, the early indicator and intervention systems, while $3.50 per student doesn't sound like a whole lot, what that really does is it's really focused on data and being able to analyze where our students are. And so those funds have really allowed us to build out our data system called EdFi, and you'll probably hear about that more as we move into the later parts of the school year. But that has helped us to be able to really target our education and make sure that we're meeting the unique needs of where each individual student is at. And then the last one there, I know it also has the 0 next to it, but Everyday Matters is our attendance piece. We have great attendance in this district, but there's always those conversations where we're looking at how can we improve the attendance of all of our students to make sure that they're taking advantage of the great learning opportunities that we have here in our district. So under the integrated guidance piece, there are some specific requirements for us to continue to access these grant funds. The requirements of the integrated guidance are that we identify and use an equity lens, that we engage our community in a process to really think about how best to use those grant funds to meet the needs of our students. And that we go through a process of doing a comprehensive needs assessment that not only involves the community, but that we look at our student data and that we make sure that we're aligning our priorities to meeting the needs of all of our students. We also are required to look at the quality education model, involve our regional CTE or Career Technical Education Consortia through the ESD, and then make sure that we're impacting or looking at the impact upon our investment decisions. In other words, are we getting what we expect out of our plans, right? And then I'll talk a little bit here more in a minute about the timeline of this, but ultimately we are then required to put together an application, and it is a 4-year plan that has clear outcomes, strategies, and what our activities are that are aligned with all of that. So the timeline, the first community engagement session, it said August up there. This actually happened last week. I didn't get to present this last month to all of you. I'll be talking a little bit about what that looks like, but the first piece is really doing a first blush at engaging our community around how do we engage community, rather than the old adage of, well, we'll just do things at back to school night, or we'll have an open house in the evening, is really engaging our community to get input on what's the best way to engage. And that was really insightful to have folks come in and chat with us about what that looks like, because I think the world has just changed post-COVID. Actually trying to get people in and talk face-to-face versus over virtual was really interesting. We kept hearing from folks, well, do you have a virtual option? And I think that would have never come up 2 years ago. I'm excited to say that we invited over 150 stakeholders from out the community. Every religious organization in our community was invited. Various agencies, from food banks to mental health facilities to foster care organizations, they were all invited to come in and be part of that. We held it over 2 particular nights. Well, I should say 1 night and 1 daytime. Our guess was that, oh, we'll have better attendance in the evening. Surprise, surprise, that's not the case now. People want to come during the day. And we actually had last week 44 different agencies or organizations represented that came in and shared feedback with us. That's a lot of people to even just bring into a room and get input from them around how best to engage folks. Out of those sessions last week, we gathered pages and pages of input. We gave an overview of how we used the grant funds in 2019-20. Like at that time, it was only specific to the SIA funds. And so we shared with them what it was that we did as a process back then. And then we broke into smaller groups and asked those people that engaged with us around, what's the best way to do this? Does it look like something virtual? Does it look like something coming to your religious organization? Does it look like something here at a board meeting? And I think we have 16 pages of notes that came out of those 2 sessions. So our next step before we move into round 2 here in September through October is we're really going to crunch all of that and analyze that data so that we are putting together a thoughtful engagement plan that will certainly include listening sessions, superintendent listening sessions, but we also want to make sure that we're getting a broader base of input, not just from parents. This is really important, not just from parents that currently have students in schools, but we want to make sure this is a 4-year plan. So we want to make sure we're engaging the full community because there are people out there that their kids are going to be coming into our school system maybe as kindergartners in 2 years, or there are people out there that maybe their kids are grown, but they are business partners and they may be able to provide something back to the district students or ultimately be the ones that are hiring our students as they leave our system. So we're really trying to make sure that we have a broad base of input. Once we've gone through that whole process of engagement with the community, then what will happen is a development of a plan. And so that's really a draft plan is what I would say. And that will happen in November through January. That draft plan then will be brought to you all here as part of the board to look at and really consider what is being proposed, how we use those grant funds, and how we've made sure that we've really thought about the input of all of our community. And then once that has been brought to the board and you've all had a chance to give input around that, then we are required to submit an application to ODE by March. And then we will wait to hear back from them. I don't know what the timeline necessarily is on their return in, but we have to have our plan approved before we would get a renewal of any of the grants. So one of the things really important to understand is that some of these great things that have been happening with our SIA funds the last couple of years, we have to go back through this process in order to even be able to continue those. And so that's a piece that we're also engaging with our community around is, hey, these are the things that we're using these funds for currently. If we change direction, that may mean, for instance, that some of our STEM programs go away, or that may mean some of our mental health supports go away because it's a finite pot of money. It's not like they're going to give us more money. So it's a 12-step process. And I just think this is a great visual to kind of see at the beginning of the summer, we really jumped in as a district team here. And we were really at step 2, like how do we even engage our community? Who even is the right group to bring in is this initial community engagement. And so I just want to give a shout out to our school district team that worked diligently over the summer to really identify our key stakeholders and then develop that plan for those meetings that happened last week and revisiting just how we might roll out our equity lens because we hadn't really landed on that yet. And so that really is a big thank you to the teaching and learning team, Marlene Carroll, Amanda Hollenberg, Aaron Gonzalez-Randalls, Amy Green, Tamara Glavin, Brady Strutz, and then we also pulled in principals. So they're all trying to get ready for the start of the school year, but we pulled them in and they did this last week on top of trying to get prepared for their staff to come back this week. Adam Mitchell, Marianne Funderheide, and Patrick Chacareau. I will just say that when we all came together, we had this planning document and we thought, okay, we're going to invite clergy, we're going to invite business partners, all of that. And I think we started out, it was kind of we had this template of who was going to call whom, and because we really wanted it to be personalized and reach out to folks. And I think we started out with a 1-page document, and I'm looking at Marlene, it was like 16 pages in the end. And it literally was over 150 people that we reached out to and said, hey, we really want to hear your voice. Please come and join us. And as you can well imagine, over the summer, trying to hunt people down, that was no small feat. So hats off to the team that helped plan all of that. This past week, then we moved into step 3, and that was that initial community engagement. And we had so many voices in that, again, the last Tuesday evening and then Thursday afternoon, just to talk about the structure of how we would do this. This is kind of what we had put in place. We started out together to review the process that was used in 2019-20 and to look at the data that came out of that. I didn't bring that here because I think that's been shared with the board before, but it was really helpful, I think, for our community partners to see how we use those grant funds currently. And to celebrate what we're doing. That was one of the things we heard loud and clear was we need to celebrate more. We had mental health folks saying, wow, this is amazing. We had no idea that Sherwood had wellness rooms or calm corners in every classroom or some of these other pieces that are going on. We had business partners saying, I had no idea of some of the community technical or career technical programs that the district has. So we heard loud and clear, we need to celebrate this. We need to get this out there more so that people are aware of that. And then as they talked about, we also then did facilitated breakout groups, so small breakout groups where we asked 4 key questions. And as you can see here, there's 3 of them. The 4th question that we added in at the last moment was, well, you're here, how else can we partner with you? If that's like getting some of our students out and doing internships, or if that's helping us run tutoring programs or those kind of things. So it really was a great opportunity to engage, and the feedback even this week has been amazing, where a number of our community partners have been reaching out saying, okay, school's going to start. What can we give you to help make sure that it's a great year for all of our students? All right, that was a lot of information all at one time. With that, I just open it up. What questions do you all have?
I have one question for you.
Sure.
How did you guys identify who to invite?
Yeah, so there's a framework that comes from the Oregon Department of Education that says, hey, you have to make sure certain groups of folks are invited. And as I looked at it, I struggled with that because I just felt like we needed to go broader than that. We need everybody's voice at the table. So believe it or not, there was a lot of Google work. We started with looking at a map, and thankfully, my mother-in-law is a clergy member in the area. And we started with a map, and we contacted every religious organization, I mean, everyone that is in the district boundaries. And then from that, we made connections with food banks and several other organizations that serve our families. So that was really the process that was there. And then as we started that work, it was almost kind of well, what about this? Have you thought about this organization or this group? So we had everything from the Sherwood Fireballs to, oh gosh, I'm just looking at my team over here. The children's librarian from the Sherwood Library, city manager. I mean, it was, you name it, they were at the table as part of this.
Very cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it looks like there are a lot of requirements there. And so I just want to, we kind of covered this when we talked about it last April, but just for the benefit of those that are maybe watching this for the first time, is there the ability to opt out of any of those requirements and still get all of the resources that are on the table?
There is not. So I was actually going to say, well, there is an option to opt out. We just don't get the money, right? So this is a shift. In the past, Oregon Department of Education has just provided these grants to districts based on their enrollment numbers and the makeup of their students in those districts. Moving forward, for us to continue to receive those funds, we must make application to the Oregon Department of Education on that timeline that I showed. Failure to follow all of the steps and to make application and have an approved application, we would then not receive that funding, which is about a little more than $5 million for us. So it's not a small chunk of change.
And and unlike in the past, we have to do all of the things in order to get the grant for any one of those. So it's not a matter of opting out of one of them where we don't get hardly any money. We have to do all of the things for any of the monies on the list.
Correct. That's a great question. Yes. So in the past, these 6 separate grants were just that. They were 6 separate grants. ODE has referenced it as they're braided now, meaning that it's one or none. The positive to that is that when we get these 6, we have a little bit more fluidity, if you will, to better meet our students' needs versus kind of these narrow silos of how these are used. I don't know, I call it a negative, but the flip side of that is that we can't say, well, no, we don't want, I'm not saying we would do this, but we don't want career technical education money. We only want, Student Success Act money from the corporate activity tax. It's all or none. And yes, we have to follow all of those requirements or our application will be turned down. In fact, one of the things that we have to do, not just this big written application for these of how we're going to spend it and why the decisions were made in such ways, we have to turn in what they refer to as artifacts, meaning for those that attended last week, they were, literally having to wet signature sign that they were there. All of our agendas, all of our documents have to be turned over as part of the application.
And Madam Chair, I'm really hopeful that through this process that we can look at, sometimes community needs assessments, and I'm familiar with them in that kind of healthcare context. Sometimes those can become very prescriptive over a very narrow period of time. And so you chase the existing set of what the data tells you, and you focus on only that. In healthcare, it's 3-year. In this case, it'd be 4-year period of time where you're chasing. And it sometimes challenges looking at longer term goals.
Yeah.
I hope we can be very thoughtful about looking at both kind of long-term and near-term goals and be thoughtful about how we put whatever plan and action that we're going to do so we don't miss the opportunity to be focused on the long term while we also chase the requirement to submit a 4-year plan and achieve things in 4-year times, that we chunk those up so that we're still very much focused on the long term in addition to the near term.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you for sharing with us. And thank you for your comments. All right, Dr. Lyon, the floor is yours again to discuss the draft of your superintendent goals.
Okay, and I think you'll see them up on the screen. You think? The variety of ways that you can craft superintendent goals is infinite. And I've always prescribed to trying to build goals around what I'm actually going to be doing. And so the 6 goals that are in draft form attempt to do just that. There they are. Okay, there we go. So the first goal is to try to do my part to work with the board of directors to model the practices and habits that lead towards the creation of a high-performing board superintendent team. And that is of the highest order of need in any school district. And it's something that has to be worked on and with supports, resources, and individual needs being met for each board member. But in modeling that and being part of that high-performing team, it allows us as a school district to position ourselves to do great things and to keep our eye on the longer and broader visions that really drive great outcomes for students. So that's goal number one. Goal number two is, as Josh just presented with the integrated guidance, it is to strive to really dial into the voice of the community, to be present in things like Chamber of Commerce meetings, civic meetings, Rotary, listening sessions, integrated guidance work, and to reinstill a sense, particularly coming out of the pandemic, that everything we do in the school district is congruent with our community, and that our schools reflect the needs and wants of our community members. And you can only do that if you provide opportunities to listen to them. And so in taking those community feedback strategies and putting them into the dialogue within the school district and within our board of director meetings, then that will also help shape our decision-making and where we allocate our resources and how we do things on each campus. As I've said in previous meetings, there is a need to strengthen the partnership with the city of Sherwood. And we've had another round of talks about adding a second school resource officer to our school district. And it looks like that is shaping up to be what I would say is a soft rollout. And that's primarily because the police department has a number of officers that are still in training, and they don't have the resources yet to allocate one for a second one to our district. So we're going to work with the police department in the city on what that rollout will look like. But in the meantime, I assure you that Chief Hanlon is so committed to having his officers be highly visible on our campuses, making the rounds. Anytime they're in the vicinity of a campus, they are instructed to swing through and be present. And of course, the great advantage we have in this community is all the schools are very close to one another. We can get to those schools very quickly, and they know that, and they are just great partners. And then we talked already about the Pedestrian Bridge, a project that the city is very excited about, and we are too. The visibility thing is very important. As we try to come back to a renewal of what we do in schools, it's important that we're visible. And visibility encourages healthy relationships. It signals to our students that we're present, engaged, and that we're celebrating your accomplishments and your challenges and all of those things. And so it's important to model that. And I intend to do that this coming year with some strategies, including regular and weekly campus visits. And I've talked to the principals about that. They're excited about that, as well as just being present for some of those great joyful things like assemblies and field days and, classroom celebrations of one kind or another. So that's a goal that's just exciting. It's the essence of what we are as educators. And it's just a blessing to be able to do that and be part of that. We have talked about the need to create it's revisit what we do as a district for our curriculum adoption process, so that specifically and honestly, we don't end up where we are in the month of September, where we have some questions and some confusion about how we got here. And we, of course, want to avoid that. And so by looking at the curriculum adoption process, we can use kind of this current one as a case study for where were the strong points, where could we do better, and work on that from the perspective of when we arrive at a recommendation for adoption, there are no surprises. And it is something that has already been vetted thoroughly. And maybe there's some insurances that it's been vetted thoroughly that we can put into place that in one way may already be there, but not exactly. And then The last one, I think, is really important. And it is to ensure that as I come in and take the lead on this really talented leadership team in this district, that we ensure the continuity of that leadership team. And from my perspective, we've got a really good blend of veteran talent and newcomers, up and comers. And the trick there is to attempt to create an environment where everyone can grow their individual leadership skills and their talents are expressed. And you can't take that for granted. You have to develop that leadership talent very deliberately. You have to ensure to the extent possible that that person is feeling supported and that has an opportunity to be successful in our school district. And that is, although it's a superintendent goal here, it really is a team goal. It's a team goal. It is to, and I've seen it here already, where there are individuals in this school district leadership that recognize that others have strengths that they don't necessarily have. And they go to that person regardless of where they are on the organizational chart. And they utilize those strengths and they celebrate those strengths of that individual. And that makes the whole team stronger. And I'm very interested in goal number 6 from a standpoint of ensuring a very good, what is already a good leadership team only grows in this coming year. So those are the 6 draft goals. I really encourage board of director members to give me feedback on those. If you see something that's not there that we've talked about and I've missed, and please give me feedback on these if you feel like you need to and want to, and we'll go forward with them. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you for sharing those with us. We are going to now move along to the action item of our agenda. I guess there's a couple action items this evening. And Dr. Lyon is going to again lead us off here with some OSBA policy updates.
All right, and let me provide a context for this. The Oregon School Boards Association is our source for taking legislative actions at the state level and at the federal level and turning them into policies at the school district level. And so these policies that the Oregon School Board Association generates is primarily through a staff of attorneys. And they put together the translation of what the intent legislatively was related to how school districts operate. We receive these in big batches, chunks. And what we do when we receive the policies is we dole them out to our leadership team that can look at them as it relates to what's going on in Sherwood. And then we get back together, we get the feedback on it as a leadership team, we decide we're good to go, and we bring them to you, the board of director members, for a first reading. And so tonight, and this is typical of all school districts, there's a bit of a backlog on these related to the last few years of COVID. And there's a lot of policies. They never stop coming. They year in and year out. There's always wordsmithing. There's always nuances of legislative intent. So the policies are continually and perpetually being updated. And we've got a batch of them tonight. And in fact, there are 3 that you have that were recommended by our leadership team. We actually need to do a little more work on it. And that's a graduation policy that may inadvertently not address our advanced diploma option. And we don't want that. So I'm gonna ask you to pull 3 of these in a minute. So what I'd like to do is well, it's at the pleasure of the board. You have all of these policies as a first read.
Madam Chair, I don't believe that if staff is recommending that we do things other than that, I don't know that we actually need to take a motion to pull them off of the first reading. I think that at next month, we can move forward only with those that staff and the chair recommend for actual adoption without having to do a motion this time.
Thank you. Thank you. So I can go through these. Most of these are wordsmithed and required policies, and we can get through them in about 15 minutes if we'd like. And Christine, are we able to pull them up on the screen and run through them so that people can see these? And I will let you know at the very beginning of each policy whether it's required, highly recommended, optional, or a recommendation to delete, okay? And on the required ones, we really don't have much of an option. Okay, first one, policy AC is non-discrimination. It's required, and it simply is some updating some legal language as required by the legislature. If you have questions, please interrupt, but otherwise, that's it. That's all I'll say. I'll cover each one very quickly. Policy DH is highly recommended. It's changing the wordage on loss coverage.
I'm going to jump in here for 1 second.
Yep.
If any of the directors have questions about these policies, please make sure you bring them up while he's going through them.
Policy GBA is a required policy. It's equal employment opportunity, and it includes a little bit of expanded language that is a legal requirement. Policy GBAAR is a veterans preference policy that it has some language changes, and we comply with that policy currently. Policy GBEA is a workplace harassment policy that this is required for the inclusion of some specific language. No change in policy. GBNA, and this is the administrative rules, is hazing, harassment, intimidation, bullying, cyberbullying, or menacing reporting procedures for staff. It's highly recommended. It includes an expanded definition of menacing and includes other language that is required to be in there. Policy GCBDA / GDBDA-AR is the Family Leave Act. And our Human Resources Department has reviewed this. And this is a policy that really is cleaning up language to current language, and there's no change with practice. Policy IB, that's a long one, Christine, those leave policies. Steve does a great job reading through this. All right. Policy IB, freedom of expression. This is a required policy that expands some of the groups that are protected and cleans up some language. IGBHA, alternative education programs required. Does a lot of reworking of the verbiage within the policy without changing current practices. The next one, the school counseling policy, policy IJ, is a policy that we do not have. It is highly recommended by the OSBA legal team. And so therefore you see a proposed model sample policy, and look over that one a little closer perhaps, because we don't have this policy. It's IJ, and it describes the outlines of a comprehensive school counseling program. Okay, the next three policies are those that we're going to recommend that we're going to pull next board meeting. It's IKF Graduation Requirements, which is a proposed. And then what that proposed policy does is it deletes our current IKF and our AR related, our administrative rules related to that. And that is where the team wants to take a closer look to make sure that it meshes with our advanced diploma options to the extent necessary. We have an optional policy, IKFB, which is the graduation exercises. That's proposed. Okay. Keep going. Keep going. Right there. Okay. What you're looking at is version 2. We are deleting version 1, which you'll see in a minute, and we're proposing IKFB version 2, which discusses just a little bit of expanded language, for example, in good standing related to graduation exercises, students in good standing. So no real change on any practice that we have, and version 1 is a delete.
I'd like to raise something that we discussed that got raised not last year, but the year before. And I don't think that this issue is fully resolved. We went through a pretty school level process of having folks determine regalia and what was allowed and what was not allowed. What came up 2 years ago, and this was right as we were getting back, the first big ceremony on the high school campus was, can Eagle Scout students, they now have a cord for Eagle Scout honors, can students wear those? And the issue that came into play was, well, it's not on the approved list, so no. But there was a promise to go back and relook at that issue. And I'm not sure that we ever completed that task. And I wonder if, as part of the graduation exercises, whether there needs to be kind of a revisiting of that issue related to what regalia can you wear and who decides whether it's appropriate. Because you want to be real careful not to get into areas where that can become very divisive. But there are other things that are now allowed that honor students' achievements that are sometimes outside of the classroom and not necessarily school sponsored. And where is that line? And so that question came up a couple of years ago. There were a number of us that were sympathetic to the idea that if we really do have a large tranche of Eagle Scout students, I mean, that is you get recognized by the floor of the US Senate. I mean, it's a big deal to become an Eagle Scout. But allowing people to wear a cord for that seems like a good idea. But then the question of where do you draw that line? But again, that's an issue that I remember, like, at the time that was an issue, and then it kind of fell off. And so whether there's an opportunity to revisit that issue and kind of this broader issue of what about non-school sponsored but significant achievements, how do we allow people to be recognized for that or not?
Right. That's a great observation. I wasn't here for that conversation. I guess that's a take back to the administrative team to talk about this policy. Certainly identifies military dress uniform, and it allows students to wear Native American items of cultural significance, and that is a required piece, I believe, and it goes no further.
Yeah,
So
those have been approved in state law, but
right,
that last piece is really, that's up to us to,
right.
and we've deferred it to the school site council to talk about, but I wonder if that conversation ever happened, and if it did, then that's great. If it didn't, then, should we revisit that? I just
Yep.
hold that as the community raised it. It was a legitimate issue at the time, and it feels like we need to close the loop.
And I would welcome anyone from the executive team who remembers that conversation to add additional comments to this. Otherwise, I will take it back to the exec team and we'll have a conversation about that. And I'll catch up on that conversation where we are.
The only thing I would say is, I believe had a change in administration at the high school since that conversation happened. And so whatever happened under the previous administration, I'm not sure if that carried forward or not. So I need to have some conversations and look into it. Is that how you remember it?
And you identified the core issue there is the line. Where is the line, right? If you do one set of recognition for an external achievement, what about this? What about that? And that is something we'll look at for sure. All right. So that was version 1 and version 2. We have policy IL is a proposed policy, highly recommended, related to our assessment program. And the key inclusion there is the statement about non-discrimination of the assessment practices within a school district. Inadvertent or purposeful, not allowed. And so that is a proposed policy regarding our assessment programs. The next one is JECB. It is admission of non-resident students, highly recommended. It is a language change without any change in practice. JB, policy JB is equal education opportunity. It's required. It's a reorganization of the language without any changes other than beefed up language on different groups that receive equal educational opportunity. Next one is JFC, required student conduct. No change in practice, change in verbiage order. JFCF, we're almost to the end. JFCF is hazing, harassment, intimidation, menacing, bullying, cyberbullying, teen dating violence, or domestic violence of students. This is a required policy. It's the inclusion of a statement that each student has the right to a safe learning environment. And it is a policy that we already have and enforce to the best means possible. On the last page,
I
there's,
do have a question about that. Can we go back to the start of the policy? I'm really interested if we can get answer from OSBA on the definition of in the district. What I want to avoid is if a student is physically outside of the district, let's say they wandered to the Newburgh Sherry's. I mean, I guess that's a college thing. You guys go to the Newburgh Sherry's? I'm seeing a bunch of head shaking. Okay. All right. Well, it wouldn't be these kids, but if you've got a kid that's at the Newburgh, whatever, and they use their phone to send a negative message about somebody else who's also at the Newburgh something or other, they're not physically in the district. The student goes to a school within the district, but they're not physically in the district. Does that somehow then, does this policy not apply because they're not physically in the district when that complaint or something happens? And so that's a question that I have, is I don't want to create a loophole that if someone isn't physically here, that they get away with it, or if the other student that is the victim in this case is not in the district, that then it somehow becomes okay. So I just would like some clarity.
the general rule of thumb is that anything that disrupts or has the potential to disrupt the educational environment. So in other words, that incident in Newburgh spills back over into Sherwood High School on Monday morning, that becomes ours, right? So we look for that in terms of, is it disrupting a safe learning environment for all students? It is a thorny, tough issue, right? Because where is that line, especially in the world, the cyber world we live in? But my experience has been, if you really hang tightly to its impact on the educational environment, our educational environment, and if it is negatively impacting it for a child, then we address it. And again, not knowing past practice, I'm getting a thumbs up. So I think that's how we handle it.
I'm very comfortable with that being the practice. I just want to make sure that
Right.
this does not limit our ability to enforce in a way that would be challenging.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I just want to make a comment. I mean, the way I read it was that in the district means, for me, a student that's registered in the district, not necessarily where they're doing the harassment or the bullying or cyberbullying. So I read it as if you are a registered student in this district and doesn't matter where you are, you're bullying or cyberbullying, whatever that may be, then that concerns you. So
It is up for interpretation a little bit though.
you think so?
We'll circle back with OSBA. It's a great, great.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I'm completely comfortable if what we get back from OSBA is that the intention is registered in the district. I'm
Sure.
totally fine with that. I just want us to be super clear so that in the event in the future that there's a dispute over whether it was harassment or not, or the interpretation, that we don't lose the ability to make sure that our rules are
Right.
enforced.
Got it. Yep. All right. And the last one this evening, we've come to an end, I'm sorry to say, is JFCJ, and it's weapons in schools. And this is a required policy. It has nothing to do with adults. It has everything to do with students, and students in many cases are young adults. I understand that, but this is directed at students and not community. And it is a required policy that prohibits weapons on our campuses in our school district, but it very specifically expands and defines many of those weapons, which my understanding is in the previous policy kind of had some misses or unknowns. And so a deadly weapon means any instrument, article, or substance specifically designed for and presently capable of causing death or serious physical injury. So it broadens it. And I think that helps us in the school environment. And you can look at the other kind of expansions of definitions within the policy. It is required, and it's regarding the presence of students having weapons in schools. And that is the first reading preview of the policies, and more to come in future meetings.
Madam Chair, I just like to
ma'am.
say I really liked this process a lot. I think it was very helpful. And I would love to see this kind of become the new tradition of how we roll out policy changes. I thought this was very good.
Thanks for sharing. I agree. It's very helpful, even though it takes a while and it's probably a little boring for everyone at home. It's nice for us to actually go through them and just hear an explanation of each item. So I appreciate that. Okay, next on our agenda, I have Mr. Rose. So I'm not sure. Oh, you are Mr. Rose tonight. Hello, Mr. Rose. All right, well, instead we will have Mr. Bennett, and he is going to discuss the interdistrict transfers.
Thank you, Chair Hawkins, Superintendent Lyon, Board of Directors. So a number of years ago, state law changed for interdistrict transfer. So that students transferring to our district from another district or from another district to our district changed from being a staff level decision to being a board level decision. And so last spring, we opened up several slots at all grade levels for students to come into our district, as well as I believe 30 slots for students to go out of our district to other schools. We've brought in, as of last time I looked, I think 49 students have come into our district and 30 have gone out. So we've gained a net 20 students, and we've filled all the slots for our kindergarten students that we had open, and we have some space in one of our kindergartens. So tonight we are making two motions or two recommendations. There are motions on the agenda if you think this is a direction we should go and would like to make the motion. But tonight we're requesting the board open 10 slots into our district for new kindergarten students to attend Middleton Elementary School. And we're recommending 11 slots out for students who want to go attend schools elsewhere. Any questions on that before we, or any more explanation needed? I'm happy to go deeper if you'd like.
Madam Chair, I forgot to raise these questions in advance, so I apologize, Mr. Bennett. do we have students awaiting those 11 slots, or is that anticipated future demand, or a portion, a little bit of both?
We have had requests for those slots. So that's why the number is sort of an odd number of 11.
So just to be clear, if there are additional students that come to us between now and the start of the year, beyond those 11, we'll need to revisit this in September.
That's correct.
Any other questions? No. Do we have a motion?
Okay. All right, Madam Chair, I move that the district grant release to 11 additional resident students for new interdistrict transfer requests out of the Sherwood School District for the 2022-2023 school year, issued on a first come, first served basis and remaining open until filled.
Thanks for reading all that. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. I would love another
All
motion.
right, Madam Chair, I move that the district will allow transfer of 10 non-resident kindergarten students into the Sherwood School District at Middleton Elementary for the 2022-23 school year, with the inclusion of the parameters presented in the summary sheet for agenda item 6B.
Thank you. Do we have a second for that?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this time, we will have all additional public comment. We have 3 other comments. You guys have 3 minutes each, so we will invite you to join us at the podium. And just as a reminder, we will not be responding, but we are happy to hear from you. Jeff Roberts, you are first up. Thanks for being here.
Chair Hawkins, I need to pause for just a second. The timer has to
No
reload.
worries. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Great, thanks again. I wanted to first express my gratitude to, seems like a major shift in more transparency in the curriculum and reaching out to the community. We appreciate that in the board, and I think it will take time, but I think as we're gaining more of a dialogue and communication with the community, and I love the outreach about the 144 groups. That marvelous. Really appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to September 8th. Didn't even know about it. So I hope this will get publicized. I hope this is first of many. And I hope this is a preemptive thing in that you're providing the curriculum. It's available for anybody months in advance so that we can come with educated concerns, discussion, etc. I also, along that line, I'm asking, was there a review for the curriculum issues that I brought up last year during the summer? Have things been fixed for equity for people who want to gain access? If it's a publisher that has copyright issues, did we find a new publisher that will work with us? I want those things fixed, or reasons why. If there's groups that are making decisions for ideological reasons or things like that, I'd like to know if that's a public process. Who are the people who made the decisions? Maybe we need to revisit those. My other concern is again, the bias. You guys do a bang up job training the students, the teachers, administration on safety. What about safety of ideas? What about bias? What about innocence? You're only innocent once. And so many times we as adults hijack that because we want to fix something that was from our childhood or whatever. And we take away this ability to learn how to learn. I told you the story about my history teacher in high school that I loved. And I remembered the rest of the story after I sat down, of course. Another teacher approached me who knew I was friends with this teacher and asked me to ask the teacher what political party he was a member of. What does that tell you? even among his peers as teachers, they didn't know what political party he was from. He protected that information because he was that type of person. He wanted to be as unbiased and he wanted to teach from that standpoint. I went and talked to him and he said, "Are you asking me, or has somebody put you up to this?" He said, "If you come back after you graduate and you're still interested, we'll talk about it. But I value your education more." Lastly, I know I only have a minute or 5 seconds, but the importance of
That's fine.
teaching positive inequality for all.
Sorry, that's time. Thank you for joining us. Steve Robertson, you have the floor next.
Good evening. I'd like to highlight a concern many good people have with public schools promoting ideology and activist-oriented agenda politics. The ideological agenda is propagated by policies at ODE, and it's implemented at the school level by DEI departments and school administrators. It's impossible to deny that leftist ideology has infiltrated public education in general, with a quasi-religious obsession with equity lens, DEI. What are the kind of things I'm talking about? Well, I'm talking about an obsession with race, with principles of CRT showing up in curriculum, development and materials, and teacher training programs where they are taught to see everything through the lens of race. University teacher training programs, of course, the future teachers to be are steeped in this ideology. It shows up in Kendi's anti-racism project, where he says the answer to past discrimination is present discrimination. It shows up from queer theory, where we get radical gender ideology, where one's gender can be placed on a seemingly infinite gender spectrum with a ridiculous number of gender names from which our kids can explore and choose for their identity. There's nothing scientific about this at all. It's just made up by queer theorists. Old-fashioned gender stereotypes are sometimes used to tell a confused kid that they might be trans, and maybe you should explore that. And we'll keep it from parents too. That happens at a lot of schools. It shows up in flags and posters on the walls in schools that are promoting social justice ideology, of course, in the curriculum and the teacher training programs. But none of this stuff should be in our schools, and it shouldn't be endorsed by our schools. Think about how a student feels who disagrees with all this completely. My daughter, her freshman year, had an ELA class that was steeped in leftist ideology. I heard a lot of it on the Zoom classes, with much of the class covering BLM-friendly and CRT-based articles and positions, basically propaganda, and they never had an opposing view or counter argument to any of it. After several weeks into the class, our daughter told us that she was literally developing anxiety just thinking about being in this class, and that's a true story. Our daughter loved literature and writing, but this kind of ruined it for her. Any kid who has a different point of view from the official narrative of a hierarchy of racial oppression, privilege, victimology, white supremacy is lurking everywhere, white privilege, white fragility, etc., that kid is going to feel stifled and won't be able to speak freely their thoughts because of the overwhelming groupthink that exists. Kids certainly feel the manipulation and coercion that's being forced on them. And I believe this is a recipe for anxiety and resentment, and it only serves to increase division. Public school is supported by taxpayers, and it needs to be, we need to get the politics out of it. Thank you.
Lindsay Broderick, you're up next.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for your transparency. As boring as these policy reviews are, I'm very grateful to be more educated in what's happening in our district. So thank you very much for that transparency. My concern tonight to share is, as a parent, I have an incoming fourth grader and kindergartner in our district, and I'm also a substitute teacher. I taught full-time prior to having children, and so I'm familiar with the educational system and how things have gone before, and how I was taught, and how practices have been changing these days. and the conversations I've been having to have with my child. My son began his education in bilingual and in full Spanish immersion. And so consequently, his reading was a little bit delayed as we moved here to Oregon. And I had to push really, really hard to help him to love reading. And that was fine. We understood the consequences. We knew what was happening, and I'm grateful for his bilingual background. However, it has been a horrible process to help my son learn to love to read. He has no desire to participate in the OBOB program. My neighbors have the entire set of books. They're big into the program. We went and reviewed all of them. My primary concern was to help my son to learn to love to read. That is a passion of any educator, but I hope of so many parents. I was struggling that much that this wonderful program has such biased content in their books, political thing that he had no desire. I didn't have the ability to force him to read. And I didn't have the ability to support him in that program because of how those books are geared. We've overcome a lot of things, and his teacher, I have heard one comment in an adult setting that led me to believe I can sort of suspect where her political views are. Other than that, I've had absolutely no, she has never shown. She's been so unbiased. She's been amazing. I'm so grateful for his teachers, particularly the last 2 years. And so she has not been a bad teacher. He's had a great experience. However, if there is bias in our literature, these students I have seen as a substitute are not engaged in their reading. It's affecting their learning capabilities. I would request that this board and our leadership team here at the district create standards. Standards are how we function, policy standards that protect our students from biased political situations, that give them opportunities to learn to engage in what they love and to continue their educational process without having political bias interfering with their life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I thank you guys all for joining us this evening. Our next meeting will be September 14th. We are looking forward to school starting. So I know I see a lot of your faces around all the different buildings as we get started. But for tonight, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.